Welcome to the Heavy Spoilers Show. I'm your host Paul, and today we're breaking down Annabelle Creation. After 3 movies in the Conjuring verse, it was very clear that Annabelle was the star of the show. Sorry, creepy nun, but yeah, this girl's got it going on. But yeah, as much as they tried, they realised who was buttering their bread and decided to make a prequel for the Annabelle prequel. After learning the story of how the Warrens came into possession of Annabelle in her first solo outing, Annabelle Creation takes us even further back to when the doll was first created, and how she became so damn evil and charming at the same time. Directed by David F. Sandberg, the film includes plenty of nods to the Conjuring Universe as well as the director's own short horror films. Throughout this video, we'll be breaking down all the hidden details and how this film ties in the rest of the Conjuring Universe. With that out of the way though, thank you for clicking this. Now let's get into Annabelle Creation. Now, I want to quickly get this out of the way, that the story of Annabelle Creation was not based on any of the Warrens' case files and is an entirely original story created for the movie. In our original Annabelle breakdown, we've discussed how the Annabelle doll is of course a Raggedy Ann doll and that there's no concrete evidence of the doll before it came into the possession of the Warrens. So go check that out if you want to know the whole story. However, because of this, the prequels are just made up backstories for the Annabelle doll in the Conjuring Universe. However, through some internet digging, I did find a case of a haunted orphanage that's very similar and possibly could have lent some inspiration. In 1902, Reverend Johann Sprunger and his wife Katharina opened the Light of Hope Orphanage in Vermilion, Ohio. This was after their previous orphanage burned down in Indiana, which was accompanied by the death of their 7-year-old daughter. The orphanage was built on Gore Road, which contained 4 farm buildings and an abandoned house known as the Swift Mansion. The mansion wasn't used for the orphanage itself, but it did come with its own ghost story. Young children supposedly died in the house, and then its owner Joseph Swift sold it to a man named Nicholas Wilbur. Wilbur was said to be a spiritualist who conducted seances in the mansion to conjure the spirits of the dead kids. However, once the Sprungers took over the property, things only turned darker. The Sprungers turned out to be absolutely horrible people who tortured and starved the nearly 127 kids they had in their care. Many of them escaped, but due to the lack of any kinds of laws or regulations at the time, nothing could really be done. Even with the Sprungers admitting to the abuse, the death of their daughter had turned them incredibly religious, and they used this as an excuse for their abuse. Along with the horrible events at the orphanage, an elementary school in the nearby town of Collingwood burned down and claimed the lives of 176 children. The orphanage was eventually shut down in 1916, but it has become an urban legend of the area that the ghosts of the children still haunt the grounds, which is now known as the Gore Orphanage. Now, this real ghost story is obviously very different to what we see in the film, but I feel like there's a lot of interesting parallels to the Sprungers and also the Mullins. While the Mullins are semi-decent people and aren't looking to physically hurt the children, the death of their daughter and their strong religious beliefs inadvertently puts the kids in danger. However, this is entirely my own interpretation of the connections that I'm making through trying to find any kind of ghost story that fits here. But I think there are enough similarities to serve as a very loose inspiration for the film. Let me know in the comments below if you know any other ghost stories that could have inspired the movie, but let's get into said movie itself. Now, we begin the film seeing the infamous Annabelle doll being created by Samuel Mullins. It's very Pinocchio, but filled with spooky details. Right away, we get a shot of Annabelle's eye rolling across the floor towards the camera. This was put in place to foreshadow how Sam's wife Esther will later lose an eye to the Annabelle demon. We then pan around Sam's workshop, which is covered with various doll body parts. Director David F. Sandberg elaborated on the scene on his YouTube channel Pony Smasher on why they had to have lots of different arms and body parts hanging up. He said that for some strange legal reason, for some Hollywood reason, they initially didn't have clearance to show doll heads, only body parts. Thinking it was strange to have a doll maker who only had like arms and like legs and butts and stuff, Sandberg actually had to fight to have some doll heads added to the shot, which is mental. Sam then puts Annabelle's eye in the socket, and I love how it shifts about, making it look like the dolls come alive. Continuing to pan across the room, we see an ad for the Annabelle doll from the Mullins toy company. Here the text says that they have produced the finest quality dolls by hand for over 20 years. We later see Sam branding the back of Annabelle with a stamp saying it's a limited edition, with only 100 being made. Bloody hell, love, you're worth quite a lot there. I wish you'd stop coming back every time I sell you.
I wish I knew how to quit you.
This also explains why Mia was so excited to receive the doll in the 2014 Annabelle movie. Her husband said not to ask about the price, and I think it kind of fills in it's highly valued amongst collectors. Now this detail is only shown for a second, but there is some text along the bottom that reads, available at Palmieri's toy shop. Palmieri is actually the same name as the apartment complex where Mia and John moved to after Annabelle started stirring up trouble. This kind of answers the mystery of where John originally got the doll from, as the toy shop was most likely nearby. The ad also mentions doll houses, which we later see that his daughter B has. We then close in on Annabelle's face with the eye still cut out, which makes her head seem more like a mask. Annabelle is kind of the mask of a demon, so this is a nice little touch. This is also the moment that I realize Annabelle has teeth, which I don't know why, but makes it seem even creepier. Another fun behind the scenes detail from Sandberg is that the brand was another legal thing that he had to fight for. He really wanted to be able to see smoke coming from an actual brand, but the studio, they just didn't like it. It's also his hand that writes the number 1 on the label. He said that all of his ones look like shit, so in the end, they decided to CGI the number in. That's modern filmmaking. Sam then puts Annabelle in her box, which is shot like she's being put into a coffin. This is just a creepy way to frame it, and it foreshadows the later death of the Mullins' daughter. Now, we learn that his daughter is named Annabelle, but that she goes by B, making the doll a tribute to her. We then get a quick wide shot of the shop that shows a boy doll in the top right corner. This is possibly a reference to Robert the doll, who is one of the first supposedly haunted dolls, and also a bit of a celebrity. We did talk about Robert a bit in our 2014 Annabelle breakdown, so go check that out if you want to know more about that little freak. I mean, great toy. As Sam puts the finishing touches on Annabelle, he's then interrupted by B slipping a note under his door. This says, "Find me." Leaving notes is a classic move of the Annabelle doll, and it further points towards what's going to happen in the Mullins' daughter. Sam then walks up to the house to find B hiding behind a curtain, similar to the record scene in the first film. You can also see a toy gun on the couch, which will be used in a scare later on. Sam then finds B, and we meet his wife Esther. Just a big old happy family.
What could possibly go wrong?
Couple details to point out here as well. The Mullins house was also a house that was used in Westworld, but through some Hollywood magic, it was turned into the creepy house we see here. Another thing I want to point out, and something that we see throughout the Mullins house, are the crosses on the front door at the top and bottom of the window, with the ones at the top being inverted. This symbolizes the battle between good and evil that will take place in the house, and is a common theme in the Conjuring Universe. Esther then puts B to bed and leaves the record on "You Are My Sunshine." This follows the motif of like every single Conjuring movie, where you need some kind of musical device that sets up a scare later on. This version of the song is actually a cover recorded for the film, as apparently that was cheaper than licensing the Bing Crosby version. However, the cover wasn't able to be used in the trailers due to some weird legal reasons. So for that, they used the Bing Crosby version in the trailer for the film, but they couldn't use that in the film itself, which makes absolutely no sense. But that's Hollywood, baby! We then see the Mullins at church, and Sam's confronted by a customer about his order of dolls. The character is only addressed as Victor, but this is Victor Palmieri, owner of the Palmieri toy shop. And again, yes, seemingly the apartment complex that Mia and John move into. While on their way home, the Mullins then get a flat tire, and Sam becomes frustrated trying to fix it. A lug nut from the tire then flies into the road, and B, being the helpful daughter she is, goes out to grab it. But BAM! Gets hit by a car. Now, I'm not really sure how they shot the scene, but it's really well done, and you can see the car making its way down the road at the start. It really looks like the car hits her before cutting to the doll, broken on the ground, and yeah, just a very well made moment. Sandberg's stuff on YouTube is something I definitely recommend you check out, because the guy explains so much, and shots like this are just so well done. We then fast forward 12 years and see a cross on the side of the road. You can actually see her photo at the top of this, with that being an image of B. There's also a small ring of flowers resting on the top of the cross like a halo. If you looked around the house in the opening, then you might have also noticed there were lots of flowers up everywhere. And we talked about how this can often foreshadow death in our Nosferatu breakdown. A bus then drives by from the St. Eustace Home for Girls, and we're introduced to our two main characters. Those are Janice and Linda. Janice, who later becomes the primary target for Annabelle, is played by Talitha Bateman. She's the sister of Gabriel Bateman, who starred in Sandberg's breakout feature film Lights Out. As the girls sit on the bus, they play with one of those origami fortune teller things that we all had in school, and apparently after googling it, they're called cootie catchers. So you learn something every day at this channel. Linda's fortune says that she'll soon make new friends, but unfortunately for Linda, This is a creepy haunted doll. So Linda really gets the shit end of the stick. We then learn that Linda and Janice are really close and the two make a pact to stay by each other's side. Basically, they're a package deal and will convince any family to adopt them both. This promise is later paralleled by Janice becoming possessed by the Annabelle demon and how it then targets Linda after Janice. 2 for 1 on souls. There's also a quick line by Janice about how she likes Linda's doll, who we learn is called Sweet Sue. This is because she looks like Linda, which is a line that's referenced later on when Janice becomes possessed.
She looks just like you.
We are then introduced to the rest of the bunch, which continues the Conjuring theme of having too many damn kids in the movie.
Who are you people?
I'll probably mess up the names along the way, but other than the two main girls, we get Carol and Nancy. Carol is played by Grace Caroline Curry, who also played Mary Marvel in Sandberg's Shazam films. There's also Tierney and Kate, who are the middle kids, but don't really do much in the movie. Leading the crew is Sister Charlotte, who we later learn has an interesting connection to the Conjuring franchise. So on this bus, we also get the first mention of Mrs. Mullins being unwell with a condition, causing her to be bound to her room. We also learn that Janice suffers from polio, which is most likely why she's targeted by the demon. She's seen as the most vulnerable and is thus an easy target. As the girls explore the house, there's also a couple more instances of crosses and flowers, with another pair of paintings with flowers on the wall and crosses all over the windows of the door to the study. There's also a huge painting of flowers in the dining room, and the wallpaper throughout the entire house also depicts flowers. There's also a circle of them similar to the one on Bee's gravestone. Another subtle nod to Bee's presence in the house are the golden bees on the banister of the staircase that can be seen when Janice's electric chair makes its way down the steps. There's also another flower on the armrest of the chair. As Janice gets into this chair, Mr. Mullin emphasises that it won't work unless the seatbelt's locked in, which you know is something that's going to come back later on.
Sometimes foreshadowing is relatively obvious.
Now, this could be my eyes playing tricks on me, but when Janice starts coming up the stairs, we flash by a door that creaked open, and you can see what looks like someone reflected in a mirror just scarily watching her. But again, it might be my eyes playing tricks on me. As she reaches the top, Janice is also framed right next to a dark hallway where you can just barely make out Bee's ghost lurking in the shadows. If you turn the brightness up, yeah, this is definitely there, and it's just a very, very cool detail. I think this is also a really clever setup by Sandberg, as you really can't see Bee unless you really focused on it. There's also the subtle sound of footsteps, but I can see how if you watch this with it very dark, you just wouldn't pick up on any of it. The older girls then quickly claim the biggest room, and we see that they're kind of arseholes to Janice and Linda. This also further plays into Janice and Linda already being somewhat isolated from the rest of the group. And another reason why they're targeted by the demon. The room is also filled with more flowers, including the walls, paintings, curtains, and beds. Janice then makes her way to the room across the hall, and she finds that it's locked. As she walks up to the door, you can also see light coming from the keyhole, which sets us up for the scare later on. Janice then sees marks on the door frame from where the Mullins kept track of Bee's height, showing that this is her room. Linda then pops out from another room in the hallway and shows Janice that she's found them a room, even if it's the scariest one imaginable. The room is filled with more dolls from Mr. Mullins, but they're literally hanging from their necks on the ceiling and all don't have faces, like some bedroom in Silent Hill or something. We then see Sister Charlotte unpacking her things, including a baby blanket, which she stares at for a good 30 seconds. This doesn't quite come back into the movie, but it was part of a storyline that was ultimately cut from the film. Feel kind of bad for laughing, but Sandberg explained in a Reddit post that there was an entire backstory about Charlotte having a kid who she gave up for adoption. The child later died and then came back to haunt her, which explains why she's trying to do right by these kids. Unfortunately, this was removed for time, but I do kind of wish that it made it to the final cut. Release the Sandberg cut. Sister Charlotte is kind of the MVP of the movie, I think, and her being haunted by grief just gives her a bit more of an emotional weight. However, there is a deleted scene on the DVD that does show a ghost boy, but other than that, we don't get the full backstory. But you will if you release the Sandberg cut. Hashtag release the Sandberg cut.
No, we're not doing this again.
As Charlotte looks at the blanket, we then see the dumbwaiter open slightly behind her. That kind of leads to a creepy scene later on. But yeah, there's something clearly haunting the house. Now, being a woman of the cloth, I feel like it's in this moment that you would kind of decide to get the hell out of there. A fun detail to point out here as well is the dumbwaiter was not part of the original set, but was added at the suggestion of production designer Jennifer Spence. This then led to Sandberg writing the scene to include it in the movie. Sister Charlotte then gets the shit scared out of her by Nancy asking if the girls can go explore the property. On the wall to the left of Nancy, we can also see a picture of Sister Charlotte and some other nuns. We later learn that this is a picture of her at the Abbey of St. Carter in Romania, which is where the Nun movie takes place. This subtly sets us up for the next entry in the franchise, and later when Sister Charlotte shows Mr. Mullins the picture, we can see the nun hiding in the darkness. I love the way that they're laying the breadcrumbs here, and even at the end of the film, we get like an MCU post-credit scene that teases the Nun movies coming next. We will of course talk about the Nun and the Abbey in our upcoming Nun breakdown, but I do want to point out this picture of Charlotte that was taken in 1951. That 1951 is very important to pay attention to, as the events of the Nun take place 1 year later, which does confirm that Sister Charlotte was there before the events of the Nun took place. Again, we see this picture in more detail in just a minute, but I think this is a really cool way to slip in a setup before the eventual reveal. And it nicely plays homage to the nun's reveal in the first Conjuring movie, where you could see a picture of her on the wall in the parents' house. Left in the house while the kids go out to play, Janice basically becomes
Squidward from SpongeBob.
She walks to the window and watches them outside, further showing how isolated she is from the group. As she's standing there, Bee's ghost then starts walking up behind her. Ooh. However, she disappears when she turns around, but the door continues to creak open. As she turns around, you can also see Sweet Sue sitting on Linda's bed facing Janet, which is another thematic way in which dolls are always watching. Ooh.
You smell different when you're awake.
Now, after Janice's first encounter with Bee, everyone gathers around for dinner and Mr. Mullins blesses the food. As he says the prayer, we can hear Mrs. Mullins ringing a bell from her room. However, Mullins is Mullins about and he doesn't stop the prayer, despite everyone looking at him. While the ringing is coming from Mrs. Mullins and it's not just a demon trick, I feel the bell is just another instance of showing how evil still lives in the house despite Mullins' attempt to hold it back with prayer. Mr. Mullins then excuses himself after finishing to go and check on his wife. However, Carol decides she wants to be nosy and she peeks in the room to get a look at the mysterious Mrs. Mullins. In what's a really cool way to build off the back of the doll, it's later revealed that Mrs. Mullins wears a porcelain doll mask. Her eye was scratched out by the demon, and this is why Carol's so freaked out here. I know they're clearly referencing Phantom of the Opera, but there's got to be like a better option than a freaky doll mask over your face. I get your husband is a doll maker, but just get an eye patch, love. Visibly shaken up, Sister Charlotte then calls Carol back to the table. I also feel like the framing of them at the dinner table is very, very interesting. It's kind of got a Last Supper's vibe to it, with Sister Charlotte at the head of the table. This could represent how Sister Charlotte will be the one to save the girls, and how this is literally their last supper together before Janice becomes possessed. Once Carol sits down, the lights in the kitchen begin to flicker on and off, and everyone looks around. They're pretty much all agreeing this shit is a bit weird, but no one wants to say it's a free house.
It's a free house for you, Jim.
Later that night, things start to get really spooky as Janice struggles to sleep and receives a note from Bee saying, "Find me." Not only does this call back to the beginning, but also Annabelle's introduction in The Conjuring. There she left similar notes for the nurses around their apartment. Janice then makes her way around the hall to Bee's room when another note slips from under the door. This urges her to come into the room. The door unlocks and Janice enters to find the room frozen in time from when Bee was still alive. Finding a key in Bee's doll's house, Janice discovers a hidden room where the Annabelle doll's been locked away, and surrounded by Bible pages. Nice that. Annabelle is also perfectly framed in the lighting, where her eyes look like two black holes. It's a smart way to make a doll we've seen in 2 movies already still be scary, which is something I think a lot of horrors suffer from in their sequels. It also plays off the notion of when we first saw Annabelle at the beginning of the movie when her eyes were hollowed out. Janice is a bit smarter than most though, as she immediately says fuck that and shuts the door. However, Annabelle keeps on opening it. It's a bit of a Pandora's box situation where she's unleashed the evil. Janice then covers Annabelle with a sheet, which then stands up and follows her. This is actually a really nice callback to the original Conjuring, where Carol Perron is covered with a sheet when she's possessed by the spirit of Bathsheba. Mr. Mullins then sees Janice through the window from the front yard and she turns around to leave. However, the sheet starts walking towards her. Just behind Annabelle/Bee, you can also see another bee in the stained glass window. We then get one of my favourite effects in the film when the sheet starts slowly walking towards Janice and drops to reveal that no one is there. The way the sheet just slips down and the effect of it falling to the ground is really smooth and such a clever way of subverting a stereotypical scare. Sheets have been used massively in horror movies, it's how we think of ghosts, and even in Halloween, Michael Myers is shown hiding beneath a sheet. There it's revealed that it's the big bad, but just having nothing, it's a nice way to kind of juxtapose our ideas. This shot is also a reference to Sandberg's short film Attic Panic, where he uses the same effect. There's another reference to Attic Panic later on that I will point out, but another cool thing I want to mention is Sandberg actually composed the score for the short film itself, and the same score is used at this moment here in Annabelle. Sandberg then gave the original score to composer Benjamin Wallfish, who covered it with a live string orchestra for the film. Fully freaked out, Janice then runs out of the room as Mr. Mullins comes up the stairs. She then runs back to her bed and pretends to be asleep. At first I thought that was kind of silly, as he clearly saw her in the room, but I realised he likely thought it was just Bee's ghost fucking about. We then cut back to Annabelle's Harry Potter room to find the chair empty, and she's now fully unleashed on the house. The camera then does a 360 spin to focus on the cross and the Bible pages on the wall. This spins the cross upside down, highlighting the infection of the demon. We then beautifully transition into the opening of the well with the girls looking down. This was actually a shot done by Sandberg using a still photo and then uploading it to Blender and Geometry to create the effects. Sandberg also used this technique for the end credits scene. He made digital copies of the Bible pages used in the film and created 3D models out of them. This then allowed him to transition the camera over the replicated pages, and that's how we get that great effect at the end. Meeting back up with the older girls, they talk shit about the Mullins, but Linda stands up for them. They pretty much tell her to fuck off and find Janice, but decide to be even bigger dicks and agree to play hide and seek with her just so she leaves. Classic that, mate. I remember I used to play hide and seek as a kid, and once I hid from my friends for like 12 hours, I was great at it. Yeah, I don't think they came looking for me. I just don't think they thought they'd ever find me.
Does this feel like the vibe?
Anyway, it makes me not even feel that bad for them later on in the movie when they find themselves on the receiving end of the demon. It's like that personal assistant in Jurassic World. You are texting, you deserve death. Also want to point out the tree in the background of the scene where we can see Teeny messing with the old treehouse. Big, creepy trees are a staple of the Conjuring universe, and while this tree doesn't really come into play, I'm glad they included it to keep things going from 1 and 2. Back at the house, Janice then confesses her crimes of breaking into Bee's room to Sister Charlotte. She talks about the evil in there, but Charlotte is more bothered about them breaking the rules. Linda then arrives looking for a place to hide and finds a secret crawl space hidden under the stairs. Linda then finds Annabelle just chilling there.
I was just wondering if you wanted to hang out with me.
We then see the demon who controls the doll standing just behind it with its eyes glowing brightly. It then snatches the doll back into the shadows. I know I shouldn't think too much into it, and demons just have powers or whatever, but I do find it funny how not only did it randomly throw her into the crawl space, but it also managed to bring a chair in as well. And that Annabelle has always got to have a chair. Before moving on, I also feel like this is as good a time as any to talk about Malthus. First appearing in the first Annabelle film, Malthus uses Annabelle as a conduit in order to torture its victims. This drives them insane, and eventually Malthus can take their souls. Malthus is also the brother of Valak, which I don't know if all the demons are technically related to each other, but still gives us a sense of how evil the dude is. However, in real demonology, Malthus is kind of a bitch. Hope they're not here. Malthus doesn't really have any kind of special demon powers, and basically just builds towers for more powerful demons. The real Malthus is also usually depicted as a dove or a raven. However, in the Conjuring films, he's depicted as a ram to tie him to the disciples of the ram cult. Which, to be fair, does sound way cooler than Disciples of the Dove. Don't sound evil or threatening at all. Malthus is also played by Joseph Becerra, and he's the secret star of the Conjuring franchise, having played Bathsheba, Malthus, and the demon from Insidious, as well as being the composer. Kind of write the theme tune, sing the theme tune kind of guy. Also, yeah, I know Insidious isn't technically Conjuring, but it might as well be. It might as well be. Leaving Linda in her terror, we then see Mr. Mullins fixing the dumbwaiter for Sister Charlotte, which is where we see the full picture of her at St. Abbey that we saw on the wall earlier. She mentions how the Sisters at the Covenant have very little contact with the outside world, and again, it's just a cool way of them setting up the nun. Among the nuns with her in the photo, she mentions Sister Lucia, which is a reference to St. Lucy, who plays a major role in The Nun 2. She's basically the guardian angel of Lorraine Warren, and she protects her bloodline. Later that night, the demon continues playing its tricks, and this time it targets the two older girls. As they sit under the sheet and talk about Mrs. Mullins, they hear the bell ringing from across the hall. As the ringing gets closer, they see her from behind the sheet walking towards them before she pops up behind them. Super creepy scene with a well done jump scare, but it also shows how the Annabelle demon preys on the specific fears of each person. While Carol talks a big game and jokes about Mrs. Mullins, we did see how she was genuinely scared when she saw her at the dinner. This is why the demon chose to take her form in order to scare them. They don't really address it, but it's basically like Pennywise. The evil Mrs. Mullins in the scenes also played by Alicia Vela Bailey, who played Diana in Sandberg's Lights Out. She's also a stand-in for a scene later in the film when Bee transforms into a giant freaky walking thing to attack Mrs. Mullins. Anyway, the next day, Linda tries to ask Carol and Nancy about Mrs. Mullins. However, Carol refuses to talk about it and says they just freaked themselves out. While I still think they're absolute dickheads, it does show that the experience has humbled Carol a bit as she motions towards Linda when telling Nancy not to talk about it, showing that she's just saying that so they don't scare Linda. The first semi-decent thing they've done thus far. We then see the real Mrs. Mullins for the first time as she calls Sister Charlotte into her room. Mrs. Mullins tells Charlotte about Bee's death, who tries to console her that she now lives in heaven. However, Mrs. Mullins simply says that she wishes that were true. Now, knowing Bee is a demon spawn, Janice starts to grasp the situation and put the pieces together. Finding a photo of Bee and her precious doll, Janice studies the photo in her room. Bee's eyes then begin to glow in the dark, similar to how we saw Malthus's eyes behind Annabelle. This actually hints to how Bee's ghost is just another one of his tricks. Janice then hears You Are My Sunshine playing in Bee's room. So obviously you hear creepy music, you hear about demons and ghosts, you get up and you go and investigate. We then pan across the room as she approaches the record player. However, she's interrupted by Linda, who follows her into her room. And BAM! Annabelle's on the bed. I love how they just slip her in there to the right of the screen with the sound and light from the door drawing our attention away from the doll. It makes noticing it its own kind of jump scare, and it's one of them where it's like, wait, was she there the whole time? Play that back, that sort of thing. Like the roof scene in Signs. Janice then tells Linda about Bee, but Linda isn't really paying attention and she picks up Bee's toy gun that we saw earlier. She then shoots Annabelle directly in the head. Oh shit! Linda, you fucked up.
Headshot.
Linda then gets thoroughly freaked out at the idea of a ghost being in the room and she reels back the ball from the gun. We then pan to see Annabelle staring right at them. Fuck around, find out. I think Sandberg does a really great job in building the tension of his jump scares where he doesn't need to implement some loud signal that something scary's happening. He tends to just put us in the viewpoint of the characters and makes a simple head turn feel more creepy than a lot of the bigger jump scares in other films. And even this one. Linda rightfully gets the hell out of there while Janice stays behind to look through Bee's diary. The last entry reads, Dear Diary, today I came home, which is possibly them also setting up the next film, Annabelle Comes Home. The door then slams shut, trapping Janice in the room. Don't be scared though, Malthus is here to put on a little puppet show. A little puppet show for you. The demon then leads her to the dollhouse, which is where she sees Bee face to face. Janice asks Bee how she can help, and Bee turns around with the face of Malthus and says,
You're safe.
When grabbing Janice, Malthus then leaves a cut on her leg, just like he did to Mia in 2014. Or the 2014 movie, I can't remember the year. This was Malthus basically marking her as his target. Janice then tries to get away, but the shadow starts closing in around her and she makes her way to the automatic chair on the stairs. However, she forgets Mr. Mullins' instructions and doesn't buckle up. Ah, nightmare. Janice then finally realizes she forgot her seatbelt and begins to descend down the stairs. But the demon just brings it right back up again. You want to have a word with the engineer on that, love? To make matters worse, Bee's standing at the top of the steps and Janice gets yanked into the air before she's suplexed to the ground. I honestly don't even know how Janice survived here because, geez, she hits the ground hard, mate. Maybe the shoe cushions the fall or something. But yeah, the Mullins definitely shouldn't be inviting people to live here with all this shit going on. While I personally think that Your Soul bit is a bit cheesy, this is easily my favourite part of the film. I think the whole sequence is really well done, and it reminds me of that care and patience that they put in the first Conjuring film where they set up the scares really well and basically had rewarding payoffs. We then fast forward to Janice returning from what I hope was the hospital. However, she's now fully bound to a wheelchair after the fall. She then tells Sister Charlotte that something threw her down the stairs and that it's coming after her soul because she's the weakest. Which is unfortunately true in this case, but better luck next time. However, Sister Charlotte gives her a good old pep talk about how the devil preys on those weak in faith, not physically weak, and that Janice is stronger than all of them. Which, yeah, that's great and all, Sister Charlotte, but we're talking about a literal demon here, not some fucking metaphor of faith. I like Sister Charlotte, I do, I swear I'm not talking shit, but you would think a nun would be a little more open to believing and even listening to the possibility of the devil or a demon being in the house. This part is also kind of messed up in hindsight because, yeah, spoilers, Janice does become possessed by Malthus, so I guess her faith is pretty weak. Good intentions, horrible advice, Sister Charlotte. Later, Linda then tries to console Janice, telling her that she will get better, but Janice has pretty much accepted her fate. She then takes back her promise that they'll stick together by saying she's just a burden. Janice then tells Linda how she's going to be adopted by a great family and she's going to have so many dolls, she won't know what to do with them.
Everything's gonna be alright.
Whew, goddamn Sandberg, you really know how to pull on the heartstrings there, mate. Janice and Linda then exchange dolls, so they'll always be together. Commenting on this scene, Sandberg said that this conversation was a scene he wanted to add because Janice basically dies after this moment, and the characters needed a farewell between them before she went full on demon mode. He also said how it's a pretty bleak ending in how evil triumphs, which is pretty much the overall theme of the movie. Very dark, but I think it really makes Janice and Linda stand out among the other kids in the Conjuring franchise. It gives them real emotional weight for their battle with the demon instead of just being random targets. Linda then goes upstairs to bed, but hears noises coming from Bee's room. She goes to look through the keyhole to see Annabelle rocking in her chair and opens the door to find that she's disappeared. Linda then holds her up in her room, armed with the toy gun they used on Annabelle before. I don't know why she wouldn't just shut the door, but instead she starts shooting the ball into the darkness before it gets stuck. And the gun is then yanked out of Linda's hand, which is kind of like, that thing in horror where they roll the ball and it doesn't roll back. Which, yeah, they've done that loads of times in this franchise. She then hears footsteps rushing towards her and she runs to bed, but oddly doesn't close the door. Which, why wouldn't you do that?
Close the goddamn door!
We then hear footsteps coming into the room and Linda sees wet footprints leading to Janice's bed. She then sees Annabelle lying there. Malthus then grabs the doll and Linda lies there terrified. But somehow, she then falls asleep and we transition to the next day. Making it through another night, Charlie gives Janice some more bullshit advice about hope and Malthus immediately starts up his shit again. He appears as the nun and then pushes her into the workshop before fucking her up. You gotta admit, mate, Malthus is evil, but the man knows his cues. Given the shitty advice as well that Charlotte's given so far, this might actually just be her and not the demon at all. Stuff starts flying around and Bee rushes to Janice, who pukes up black bile in her mouth, fully possessing her. This is a classic possession trope used to signify being fully corrupted and consumed by evil. It's also another callback to the original Conjuring, but yeah, this means that Janice is pretty much gone. R.I.P. Now, like I said before, I think one of the major strengths of this film, like compared to the other Conjuring movies, is how Sandberg really makes us care for Janice by focusing on her and Linda's relationship and her isolation due to her condition. I think this really helps us as an audience to build a relationship with the character in a way that we didn't necessarily have with the previous possessed people in the Conjuring franchise. No disrespect to the Perrons, but I never felt that they were in any real danger. The main focus was kind of always on the Warrens in those films and how they would save them. Similar to Maya in the first Annabelle though, I think the absence of the Warrens allows the demon to feel more like a threat and for us to care more about the actual victims of the hauntings rather than just the Warrens. Cutting back to the movie, Linda then tells the other girls that something's up with Janice and about the strange things going on in the house. She mentions what happened with Mrs. Mullins, and Nancy has a line about ghosts only being dead people. This is actually the same thing that Evelyn tells Maya when they discover she's being haunted by a demon in the first Annabelle. The callback to the line here indicates that this is the first time the girls realize that something more sinister is going on and that Malthus is done playing tricks. While sharing their ghost stories, Caroline comes in and of course has to ruin the fun. She says it's all bullshit and that Janice is just trying to get attention because they bully her and she sends Linda away. We then transition to the next day and I just want to point out how we have seen nearly every single sunrise and sunset since the girls have been at the Mullins house. It's really subtle, and I probably wouldn't have noticed it if we weren't watching this frame by frame, but it's a really cool editing choice to give us a sense of how long this has been going on and experiencing the haunting along with the girls in real time. Linda then sits on the porch and is joined by Mr. Mullins, who shows off his sick new cross. They begin to have a heart-to-heart with each other when Linda tells them about Janice finding the doll. This makes him flip his shit, and also Linda is an absolute snitch. and honestly kind of a bad friend. Just completely threw Janice under the bus. Mr. Mullins then rushes into the house and we see him standing in front of the door with the crosses on it, but this time we can only see the inverted ones. This shows that something bad's about to happen to him. He hears Janice humming "Don't Take My Sunshine Away" and he finds Annabelle sitting in the dining room. This is the same place where he found Bea at the beginning of the film, with the whole scene serving as a dark reflection of the opening, even leading to the same note he left her saying "Found you." Janice then sneaks into frame from her wheelchair and stands up and stares at Mr. Mullins.
She can walk.
What? Oh my god! Who told you?
Her eyes then begin to glow and she steps back into the shadows before cracking and snapping her bones to transform into Malthus. Mr. Mullins then tries to use his new cross, however he doesn't have the god juice of Ed Warren. Malthus then breaks his fingers one by one until he drops it. We then hear the cracking sounds of Mr. Mullins seemingly being folded up like a pretzel as we close in on Annabelle's face. I love how they put Annabelle at the head of the table and it's basically like the mob boss getting revenge with Malthus being the enforcer. Hearing his screams outside, Sister Charlotte then rushes in to find him crumpled up on the floor. We then just kind of flash to him being taken away in what I guess is an ambulance. But like, has no one got any questions about what happened to him? As they drive off, Janice then watches from the porch on a rocking chair with Annabelle. This is another callback to the original Conjuring when Bathsheba sits with Annabelle in the rocking chair at the Warrens. And I even rewatched Last Rites recently and they had a similar scene in that. Here is the lovely 4K steelbook that I watched it on. It's actually, you know what? People slag off the Conjuring movies. I quite enjoyed it. After everyone's sent to bed, Linda's sick of all this supernatural shit and she steals Annabelle while Janice is sleeping. Planning to throw her down the well, Linda then makes her way across the property. However, she feels something following her and we hear footsteps running behind her. There's actually some really cool footage of Sandberg and his team discussing this particular shot on YouTube, which doesn't really reveal anything crazy about the scene, but I think it's just really cool how you can kind of see the discussion that goes into crafting a scene like this. Holding Annabelle by the throat, Linda is then met by Sister Charlotte, who tells her how the doll is responsible for everything going on in the house. She then drops her down there. Woohoo, we've done it. Side note, I'm also I'm probably one of the only people who remembers this, but this sequence reminds me of the Goosebumps episode Night of the Living Dummy 3, I think it was, where Hayden Christensen, aka Anakin Skywalker, he threw the evil dummy Slappy down a well. Did it inspire this scene? I think it did. As Linda begins to head back to the house with Sister Charlotte, she hears whispering coming from the well and looks over the edge before being grabbed and pulled in to join Annabelle. Luckily, Sister Charlotte jumps into action and is able to pull her back up. And they then flee back to the house. Linda then rushes up to the room to tell Janice she got rid of the doll, but she finds Annabelle in her place. I lived, bitch, fuck you. Some small details to point out here as well. While I think the scene is pretty good, Sandberg was apparently never really happy with it. He didn't have enough time to do it the way he wanted, and I think, you know, if you're making something, that's always going to frustrate you. Due to bloody child labour laws, the kids weren't allowed to work past midnight, so they had to wait until 10 PM when the sun set and quickly shoot this in the space of 2 hours. And apparently there was a lot of time wasted on faulty fog machines. The scene also seems to be an homage to another one of Sandberg's short films, Coffer. This has the main character being pulled into a box, similar to how Linda's pulled down into the well. Finally realizing the gravity of the situation, Sister Charlotte takes charge and confronts Mrs. Mullins directly. We then learn the backstory of how the Mullins were tricked by Malthus, who took the form of Bea. The Mullins then gave Malthus permission to move into the doll. The doll then attacked Mrs. Mullins, which led to the loss of her eye, confirming that Annabelle is in fact more powerful than the Witch King. We can't show it because of bloody YouTube. I know you hate them, but I like how the wound over her eye, it looks kind of like a dark handprint. Mr. Mullins then locked the doll away in the closet, surrounded by Bible pages, and had priests bless it to contain the evil. This of course parallels Annabelle's later imprisonment by the Warrens. The doll was kept in a glass case that was regularly blessed in order to prevent her from escaping. However, unlike the Warrens, the Mullins didn't make her the centerpiece of the house and a nice bloody tourist attraction. Could have made yourself some dough there, love. We then meet back up with the other girls and they find Janice in Bea's room. She's having a tea party with Annabelle, just like how Bea was when Mrs. Mullins was attacked. Janice then stands up to reveal she has a knife and she attacks the girls, slicing Nancy on the arm. They then run downstairs to meet Sister Charlotte, who tells them to go and get help. The girls then call the police, but hear Mrs. Mullins' bell ringing from her room. They then enter and find her cut in half and strung up on the wall in a crucifixion pose. Holy shit. Things got so fucking real fast, mate. I think this scene was like really shocking as the Conjuring films, they usually don't depict brutal violence. And it just makes this whole ending sequence a lot more scarier. Back with Sister Charlotte, she then finds Linda and one of the girls upstairs who's facing off against a possessed Janice. She starts to pray towards the demon, but she's no Lorraine Warren. Janice then lifts her up in the air before slamming her against the wall. The effect of Sister Charlotte levitating, that was actually achieved by just slowly moving the camera down as opposed to actually filming her lifting up. That's just another cool example of Sandberg utilizing his experience working on a small budget on his short films and finding creative ways to use cameras to create practical effects. With Sister Charlotte out of commission, Linda and the other girls run out, but Linda falls and is pulled back into the darkness. We then see what happens with the other girls, and Carol gets some well-deserved revenge for being such a bitch. She's attacked by Malthus in the shed, who's posing as the scarecrow that Carol messed with earlier. While being taunted by Malthus, we get a shot of a light bulb unscrewing itself, which is another nod to Sandberg's short film Attic Panic. There he used the exact same effect. While Carol is getting her just desserts, Linda tries to escape from Janice by hiding in the dumbwaiter in Sister Charlotte's room. Linda's able to escape, but she then finds Janice waiting for her at the bottom of the stairs.
You can't escape me! I'll chase you to the ends of the earth!
She stabs Sweet Sue in the face, and this references her earlier line about how she looks just like Linda. She then hides in the closet where Annabelle was imprisoned, but surprise, motherfucker! Annabelle's already there, back in her favorite chair as well. Despite Janice coming to murder her, Linda still takes the time to turn Annabelle's head away from her because, yeah, it's just not nice knowing that a doll's constantly staring at you all the time. Janice then finds Linda and pins her to the ground before she then stabs her. Sister Charlotte returns holding Annabelle hostage, and Janice goes to stab Charlotte. However, she puts Annabelle between them and slips a rosary bead around her neck. She then shoves her into the Annabelle closet, and that's the evil vanquished.
Fuck you!
Now, there's nothing here to point out really. I just think it's kind of funny that Charlotte just throws Janice into a closet like a fucking rag doll. Shit then starts flying around the house in typical demon fashion, but everyone escapes to the front yard where they huddle together and leave Janice trapped. We then see the police arrive as they search the house, but surprise, surprise, Janice is gone. We discover that she's dug her way out of the closet, like Shawshank Redemption on speed or some shit. However, she has left the old Annabelle doll behind. Father Massey then blesses the house and takes the doll, saying that it was only a conduit for evil, and now it's just a regular doll. Phew, idiot. Yeah, don't give it, burn it as quick as you can. Annabelle's then hauled up by the police, and the girls board the same bus they arrived in to find a new home. Before leaving them to go and drive off into the sunset, we focus on Linda's doll that she got from Janice, and this shows that Linda will always carry a part of Janice with her wherever she goes. And it's symbolically, if we're writing a video essay, it's about how they've made a promise to stick together forever, and that's what they're doing. Now, we then end the film with a couple arriving at an adoption agency to meet their new daughter. Quick note, the adoption agent is played by Sandberg's wife Lotta Lutson, who cameos in all of the director's work. The couple is then revealed to be the Higginses from the original Annabelle movie, and the girl they've come to adopt is none other than Janice. We then get a cameo from the real Annabelle as the Higgins give her a Raggedy Ann doll. This is just a nice little detail, and it does kind of indicate that she's still possessed by the spirit of Annabelle, the demon Malthus. This then leads us to 2014, where we get a recap of her murdering the Higgins 12 years later. We also get a quick shot of Annabelle/Janice through the airs and can quickly see her reflection before she passes over the frame, similar to the shot of her shadow moving across the wall in the first Annabelle. Now, I don't know if this is confirmed in the Conjuring lore, but it does seem that Malthus comes to claim a soul every 12 years. As this is the same amount of time from Bee's death to when the girls arrived at the Mullins house. I always love the way we cut to Mia though, waking up and then get a scene of John going to investigate the neighbours. Always love that ending, and it's a great way to basically let you know how everything's connected. The credits then roll, but we don't leave without Annabelle coming to say goodbye as we close in on her face sitting in her Bible prison. It's a great way to end the movie, and it's similar to how we ended the first Annabelle with her in the Warrens Museum. We also get the Conjuring clown box theme which ends all the films, and Annabelle slightly moves her head before cutting to black. Now before getting out of here, I did notice a legal disclaimer at the bottom that reads, "No person or entity associated with this film received payment or anything of value," which is funny. I think the entity line there is just Warner Brothers. Basically, their legal team doing something so Malthus doesn't sue them. And maybe it confirms that Malthus does in fact exist, and he works with Warner Brothers. But that brings us to the end of Annabelle Creation, and also this video. I think Creation often gets overlooked as it doesn't involve the Warrens, but I think it's actually one of the stronger films in the franchise. I think Sam Bigg brought a really great perspective to the Conjuring Universe, and he focused on the characters first. For me, this always feels like the most classic horror movie entry in the franchise, if that makes any sense. I think it also has one of the better endings, as the demon actually wins and everything isn't just neatly wrapped up and everyone gets a big group hug like they do in the other Conjuring films. All in all though, I really enjoyed going back to this one, and it's not too often we get to break down a movie from a fellow YouTuber. I think it's cool how Sam Bigg was able to bring his style to this big franchise, and to be honest, I've never seen him do a bad job. We have talked a lot about the behind the scenes details in the video already, but if you want to learn more, Sam Bigg's channel's on YouTube. Called Pony Smasher, does great behind the scenes stuff. Best director behind the scenes stuff you'll find probably. Let me know down in the comments though what you thought of Annabelle Creation, and be sure to subscribe if you don't want to miss the rest of our Conjuring breakdowns. If you want to follow me on Instagram and keep up to date with what I'm doing as well, then make sure you check us out at Heavy Spoilers. Did you know as well that members of the channel also get early access to videos like this every single week? We've done Texas Chainsaw recently early, Psycho, It Chapter 1 and 2. There's loads of stuff out there. It's just 99 cents a month, and it all goes towards helping these videos get made. Huge thank you if you do that. If not though, well, I still like it anyway, but yeah, please give me 99 cents a month. Now, if you want something else to watch, we've got a video on screen right now, and hopefully I'll see you over there after this. Out of the way though, I've been your host Paul, you've been the best, and I'll see you next time. Take care. Peace.